Hello there folks, my name is Spooks and welcome back to another episode of Box Office Chat. This is the show where I break down the top 5 domestic box office results, see where each movie landed, and see how well each movie did. So let's get started. Number 5 was Men, opening with 3.3 million this weekend domestically, and that total stays the same worldwide as far as I know, at the time of this recording, it has not been released in any international countries as of yet. But anyways, this film kind of overperformed, at least in my eyes. Last week I talked about how I didn't feel like this movie would make nearly enough to crack into the top 5. That was a little bit short-sighted on my part, given, well, how it being the week before Memorial Day weekend would allow this week to not only be a bit slower in terms of movie going, but also allow for much more new movies to enter the top 5, whether or not they do open bigger or lower than we expect. And this kind of helped Men in some ways, because the battle for the number 5 spot was actually quite competitive, but the totals for Men and the number 6 spot, Everything Everywhere All at Once, were rather very close. They both earned around 3 million. I believe Everything Everywhere All at Once was at 3.1 million, and once again this was at 3.3 million. Again, very close race, but all around a solid weekend for A24, as this film entered the top 5, and Everything Everywhere All at Once is now officially the highest grossing film of the company's entire filmography domestically. And of course, Men entering the top 5 and overperforming, well, in my eyes at the very least. It certainly tapped into that A24 zeitgeist and the horror zeitgeist, and really sparked an interest within horror fans and fans of A24 and general moviegoers as well. However, I am a little concerned about whether or not this movie will maintain this audience and word of mouth to the same degrees that Everything Everywhere All at Once did, as reviews were not as good as Everything Everywhere All at Once. I know they're two very different movies, but considering they're from the same studio and the degree and hype around both of the films being somewhat similar, in my opinion, I feel the need to compare. But anyways, I do not think this movie might reach that level degree, because A, it's a horror film, and usually that's a much more niche audience, especially for an indie type horror film. And also, word of mouth has not been so kind. On CinemaScore, it received a D+. That is horrendous. We talked about how getting a B was cause for concern. You do not want a D+ on CinemaScore. That is indicator that word of mouth is atrocious, and I do have a feeling that this is going to affect the movie dearly, as word of mouth will probably not help this movie. It'll probably make people want to avoid this movie for the remaining weeks, but we'll see how well it does in the future. I'm a bit concerned to see where it goes, especially with it entering so low in the top 5, but Everything Everywhere All at Once was still able to impress, as well as stuff like Hereditary, which was also kind of a polarizing horror film from A24 in terms of audiences. Critics generally liked it, but audiences were on the polarizing side. But yeah, as far as the opening weekend go, Men certainly impressed me, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see where it goes from here. Number 4 was Sonic the Hedgehog 2, making 4 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of 181 million and a worldwide total of 375 million. So, in the film's 7th week, it still continues to do extremely well. It had its best hold in its entire theatrical run, dipping 12%. That is very solid. It was also able to do what I predicted last week and surpassed 180 million domestically. That is a very solid total, and puts its domestic total just 20 million away from 200 million domestically. Almost got the numbers confused there, I apologize. And also, in terms of its worldwide numbers, it puts it around 25 million away from 400 million worldwide, which is also enough to also surpass Uncharted worldwide in terms of the highest grossing films based off of a video game charts worldwide. domestically, it is still the biggest movie based off of video game, and just for the sheer fact that it was able to enter the top 5 highest grossing movies based off of video game worldwide is still an accomplishment to behold. However, I do think it's going to struggle getting to 200 million domestically, given how at this point it's got a lot more in its way. First off, summer movie competition is going to be fierce and competitive, and given how much it's making and where it's at in the charts, I do think it's going to start falling very soon, as well as the fact that the film is now available to watch at home. This week it is said to be streaming on Paramount Plus and available to watch at home on demand digital services this week as well. So now people are given the option to watch it at home. That's definitely going to hinder its performance at the box office for sure. But even with those issues, I still think this movie has done well. It's basically a fact at this point that this movie has done tremendously well. It has made well over its $90 to $110 million budget without being released in Japan. It doesn't come out till August, which should definitely boost its total to 400 million globally, which would be incredible, and also enough to surpass Uncharted, which it probably will be able to do by that point. But yeah, just the sheer fact that this movie was able to be as successful and do as well as it did financially is such an achievement. The fact that this is the bar for movies based off video games. A sequel to Sonic the Hedgehog shows what a movie based off of a video game could and should do at the box office in terms of success and recognition is honestly astonishing, and the fact that it was able to do so is honestly quite impressive. So if this is the last time or one of the last times we see Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the charts, bravo, what a run at the domestic box office. It put up quite a fight against a number of competitive movies, but it was able to remain in the charts for quite some time and put up, once again, a very good fight. Good job, Sonic the Hedgehog 2. You did very well at the box office. Number 3 was The Bad Guys, making $6.1 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $74 million and a worldwide total of $183 million. So much like Sonic the Hedgehog 2, it had a very solid hold of around 13%. That is, once again, not only the best hold in its entire theatrical run as of late, but also just in general a very solid hold, despite what many would say were a couple of setbacks that would hinder this film's performance this weekend. First being that it is now available to watch at home via on-demand and digital services for a retail price of $20, mind you. So families could now watch the film at home together and pay the price to watch it at the comfort of their own home rather than seeing it at the theater. And technically there was a new family film released this weekend, but it was released on a streaming service known as Disney Plus. You ever heard of it? Called Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. And that certainly would technically count as competition for The Bad Guys, as that is released in theaters while Chip and Dale was released at home. But despite all those, it was still able to do very well at the box office, indicated once again by its very solid hold, and it is now the 8th highest grossing film of the year domestically and the 9th highest grossing film worldwide, as it is now on its way to surpass 80 million domestically, which I'm sure it will be able to surpass by next week, and it is around 20 million away from 200 million worldwide, which I think this movie might have a shot at, given how well it should be doing for the past couple weeks and the upcoming weeks, as once again there is a severe lack of family animated films right as of late, and I think this film is still going to do very well, similarly to how Raya and the Last Dragon, The Cruise, A New Age, and Sing 2 did at the box office for similar reasons. even with there being a new animated film hitting theaters this weekend, more on that later, that is going for a much older audience, and this one, the bad guys being more family friendly, I see no reason why the two won't have any problems facing each other this weekend. But yeah, the bad guys continue to do well. It's a win for Universal, a win for DreamWorks, and overall doing very well for itself. Number 2 was Downton Abbey, A New Era, opening with 16 million this weekend domestically and 53 million worldwide. So while yes, it did open lower than the first one, and it certainly didn't really do a whole lot to damage Doctor Strange, honestly, this is kind of a win. Not just for this movie, but for the current state of movies in general, as despite this being a PG-rated movie, this is clearly aiming for a much older audience as well as fans of the show, who I'm sure the large majority of who saw the first film and liked it rushed to see this one as well. But yeah, this film was able to tap into that small percentage of older audiences, specifically those over the age of 35, who were a bit hesitant on returning back to theaters given how we are still in a pandemic and things are a little iffy. Well, not as iffy as they were prior, still a little bit iffy, and people are still concerned about, staying safe and healthy. But this film was actually able to tap into that audience and score a big enough opening, not only to satisfy movie theaters with a new movie, but also enough to make it the biggest opening weekend for a movie skewing towards older audiences post-theater closure, topping the previous one, House of Gucci, which made 14 million for the 3-day opening weekend it had, since it was released during the Thanksgiving holiday. But still, this is honestly not that bad of an opening weekend in my opinion, and what really helps is that the film was released internationally before it was released domestically, and that helped boost this movie a lot. It is at over 50 million worldwide, which is over the initial budget of 40 million, and now all it needs to do is double that. So the question remains, will it have strong enough legs to get there? Honestly, I have no idea. Competition is fierce, and I'm sure while the holds won't be significant or anything, it'll probably honestly be on par with something like The Bad Guys. It will be interesting to see where this movie will go, because obviously it's not going to make nearly as much as the first Downton Abbey movie, but if it can even come close to that by just maybe like 30% off, or maybe even 20% off, I'm sure this will still be satisfying enough to many and to still be considered a success. Don't know if it's going to get to 80 million. Once again, competition is fierce this summer, but as far as things going right now, this is a pretty solid opening given the audience it's geared towards and the fact that, well, it's a sequel to Downton Abbey. And finally, let's end the video off with the number 1 movie of the weekend, and that was, for the 3rd week in a row, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, making 32 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of 342 million and a worldwide total of 804 million. So this weekend was much better than last weekend. It only dipped 47% from last weekend, which is a much better hold than last weekend, indicating that the film is going to pick itself back up, which is very good, and put its domestic total not only over 300 million domestically, but just around 20 million away from the Batman's entire domestic total of 369 million, which I'm sure it will be able to surpass by next week, even with the stiff competition on the horizon. More on that later. And in terms of worldwide, it is now officially the highest grossing movie of the year, and as well as it was able to surpass 800 million worldwide, which is all around impressive and expected. The real question, though, is, will it be the first movie of the year to surpass $1 billion? And even with the competition and how fans have reacted towards this movie, I think it might have a shot at getting past that total, judging, and I know this might be not the best comparison, but Spider-Man No Way Home was able to do so back in December of last year amid a spike in COVID cases back then. And while this movie is certainly not to the same level of hype or even praise as that film, given where it's at and how it's been doing for the past couple weekends, and overall just judging it compared to other MCU films, I see no reason why it wouldn't surpass $1 billion. Though I don't think it's going to be marginally over $1 billion, given that we are still in a pandemic. It wasn't released in China, and it wasn't as well received as many other MCU films, but I still think it's got a shot. It'll still be able to surpass it, just not significantly over, like, say, Spider-Man No Way Home, Black Panther, and especially Avengers Endgame. But even if so, this film has still a massive success right now. It's the biggest movie of the year domestically, worldwide, and of the summer movie season, all around doing well. This weekend, though, I do see it starting to fall off the charts a bit now that the summer competition is on the horizon and becoming more fierce and competitive. And once again, there's just more of them, especially this weekend. So definitely going to be interesting to see if it will still be able to maintain itself, but still, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is in pretty good hands at the moment. And those were the top 5 domestic box office results for this weekend, but we're not quite done yet, as we've got another week ahead of us and new movies hitting theaters. And this weekend we got a big weekend for movies. It is obviously Memorial Day weekend, and before we get into the movies, I just want to wish you all a very safe and happy Memorial Day weekend. Cherish the time with your loved ones, have fun out there, don't go too crazy, still be safe, and don't do anything that could harm yourself or others, mind you. I know some of us like to get crazy out there, but above all else, be safe and happy and have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. But as far as movies goes, we've got 2 new major wide releases, the first being the Bob's Burgers movie. This is the movie based off of the beloved and award-winning animated series that airs on Fox, and it was originally supposed to come out in the summer of 2020, but then, well, happened, which caused this film to be delayed 2 years later, and now it is officially hitting the big screen. And many people are saying this is probably going to tank and flop, given that it is a 20th Century Studios film. But while I do see why they say that, I can also see some ways where this could overperform. One is that it's based off of a beloved series, and without a shadow of a doubt, I believe the majority of fans are going to rush out to see this movie for sure. Now, how many of them is where the questions and problems arise, but I think it's big enough to help this movie out, as well as it being a comedy released in right now, which has been seeing somewhat of a resurgence with films like Jackass Forever, Dog, and even The Lost City, showing how well comedies can do right now, not only compared to their budgets, but just as counter-programming against the sea of huge blockbusters. And reviews are really positive as of late. Even those who aren't fans of the show are really liking this movie, and overall reactions and reviews as of late have been very positive. However, there is one addendum to this movie, and that is the fact that it is a 20th Century Fox film, so obviously the marketing has been quite bad, which was honestly really shocking to me, because even I didn't believe that Disney would drop the ball so hard on not giving this movie the marketing it deserves when it's competing with another big movie, which we'll talk about in a second, and releasing it on Memorial Day weekend, which again hurts me as a fan, but I can't say I'm surprised given how the last few films from 20th Century Fox have done. So this will definitely be interesting to see. It could overperform or it could meet the very low expectations, but we'll see how Bob's Burgers does. And the other film releasing this weekend is Top Gun Maverick. Yet another film that was delayed because, well, happened. And let me be frank, if this movie had come out when it was originally supposed to come out in 2020, hell, maybe even last year, I would have been saying, oh my god, what is the point of this? What are they doing? Does anyone even care about this movie? Is anyone interested in a sequel that came out 30 years too late? But then, after all of the delays happened and they finally said this movie is coming out this weekend, and they started the marketing campaign and released the second trailer, the whole scenario somewhat flipped. The film started getting all of this buzz and attention and hype around it, and people were getting excited and interested in seeing this movie. It was honestly quite the comeback story, at least in my eyes. And then the reviews came out and early screenings started pouring out, and it got even better. This is one of the most critically acclaimed films of the year as of late, and now the film has been tracking very good, so much so that many people are expecting it to make anywhere from 90 to even $130 million this weekend. Now, in my opinion, I feel 130 is a bit much. It's going to do well, but not that well. But I do think we are going to see a very impressive opening weekend that is not only huge and worthy of a Memorial Day weekend box office number one, but also just given the fact that they were able to take what should have been a pretty much another pointless legacy sequel that came out way too late and turn it into a huge box office success. I'm honestly shocked as you are. But we'll see how well this movie does, as well as the rest of the movies that land in the top 5 on the next Box Office Chat. And that's going to do it for this week's episode of Box Office Chat. What did you all think of the results? Were you satisfied, unsatisfied? Comment down below and let me know. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you like this channel, hit the subscribe button. Follow me on all the social media links right there. And until next time, everyone, stay sharp.